My devotional today is entitled, Do It for the Loved Ones in Your Life. I'm basing this on scripture out of the book of Numbers, chapter 14, verses 29 and 30. And I'll also make reference to Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse number 39. Do it for the loved ones in your life. In this scripture, in these verses, in the context of this, Israel is on their way to the promised land. They have experienced and seen the Red Sea open. They have eaten manna from heaven. They have watched water come from a rock. They have experienced the visible presence of God in a cloud by day and fire by night. And yet, at the very threshold of the promised land, they doubt God. They complain, they murmur, they question whether or not God can bring them into the promised land. And in the midst of their doubting and questioning God, God responds with words that must have shaken the entire camp. He says in Numbers chapter 14, verse 29, your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness. From 20 years old and upward, you shall not come into the land. So everyone 20 and older would die in the wilderness. Now, they would still walk, they would still endure, they would still sacrifice, they would still fight, but they would never personally possess Canaan. That's just unimaginable. Knowing that the rest of your journey would be toward something that you would never enjoy. But yet and still, Israel kept walking, knowing that 20 years and older, everyone that's 20 years and older will walk for another 40 years, but they would not be able to possess the destiny that they were walking toward. It's all because God has said there in the Deuteronomy verse, he says, your little ones, them will I bring in. So the parents would not enter, but the children would. And for nearly 40 years, that wilderness generation continued moving. They broke camp, they followed the cloud, they gathered manna, they fought battles, they maintained worship, they carried the tabernacle, they buried friends, they buried spouses. They were marching toward a future that they would never personally inhabit. They're living for someone else's tomorrow. And that's maturity. That's legacy. That's love. Now, they could have said, if I'm not going in, I quit. They could have said, if I don't benefit, I won't build. They could have said, if I won't see it, then I won't support it. But they didn't. They did it for the loved ones in their lives. Because again, if you turn to Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 39, God says something very powerful. He says, your little ones, which in the day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither. The children who watched their parents fail, the children who witnessed funerals in the wilderness, those children who grew up hearing the stories of Egypt and the Red Sea, they were the ones who crossed over. So, and here's the part that we often miss. They could not have entered the land if the previous generation had not sustained them. Somebody had to fight the Amalekites. Somebody had to gather manna. Somebody had to maintain worship. Somebody had to preserve the covenant. Somebody had to keep the fire burning in the tabernacle. And it was that generation, that previous generation, that knew they would not enter the promised land, but yet and still, they protected the promise. Again, they did not get to the land, but they protected the promise. Sometimes that is what love looks like. Love is not always enjoying the harvest. Sometimes love is tending the field so someone else can harvest. Sometimes love is planting seed that you know you will never be able to gather a harvest from. And some of us are in that season right now where we may not see the full promise personally. We may not see the church at its fullest strength. We may not see culture change during our lifetime. We may not see the financial breakthrough that we desire. We may not see the total restoration for the things that we prayed for, but our children might. Our grandchildren might. The next generation might. And so we keep praying, we keep teaching, we keep giving, we keep serving, we keep building, we keep standing, even if we never personally cross Jordan. Because legacy is not about possession. Legacy is about preparation. That previous generation teaches us that obedience does not lose its value just because the reward is deferred. You may not enter the land, but you can make sure that your children know the God of the land. You may not see certain things be completed, but you can lay a foundation. Because what we lay as a foundation is just as important as the structure and the building that comes on that foundation. We may never enjoy the shade of a tree, but that does not mean we can't plant the tree. Sometimes doing for the loved ones in our lives means enduring what they will never have to endure themselves because we absorbed it. We took the hit. We planted the seed. That means making sacrifices that they may never fully understand. It means staying faithful in our marriages, even so that our children will know what covenant really looks like. It means remaining committed to the church so that the next generation has a spiritual home. It means being disciplined financially so that our family inherits stability instead of chaos. It means staying rooted in holiness so that our children inherit clarity instead of confusion. So that previous generation had to accept a painful truth. They would not step into the promise, but they refused to let their failure cancel their faithfulness. And that may be the word for us today. Your past mistakes did not disqualify you from building a future for someone else. We have all missed opportunities, but that don't mean we stop walking. Because the opportunity that we miss may be the opportunity that our children and our grandchildren are able to experience. Our consequences do not cancel our calling, but they nurture the next generation. So we do it anyway. We do it for the loved ones in our lives. We do it because somebody is watching. We do it because they are learning. We do it because somebody will inherit what we are building right now. And one day, Joshua would lead the next generation across the Jordan. One day they would eat the fruit that they did not plant. They would live in houses that they did not build, but none of it would happen without the previous generation that walked faithfully in the wilderness. So today, ask yourself, what am I building that I may never personally enjoy? And then ask, who is depending on me to keep walking? Faithfulness is not measured by what we receive, it's measured by what we preserve. So keep walking, keep serving, keep believing, keep building. Even if you never see Canaan, do it for the loved ones in your life.